let's shade some shapes. First thing, shapes are two-dimensional. That means they have height and width, but no depth. So if we want to shade it to give it the illusion of being three-dimensional, we'll have to put some darks with it. First thing to know is, where is the light source? And the light source is like the lights in your room or the light coming through a window. So that's the first thing to decide. Where's your light source? And since I'm just making this one up, I'm going to say my light source is right over here. So if this is my light source, the place that it hits my circle, which I'm going to turn into a sphere, will be right about here. So that's where I want my lightest area to be. As the light travels around the sphere, it will gradually get darker because this side is the furthest side away from my sphere. So I'm going to go ahead and shade this in. And you can do this with hatching or cross-hatching or blending or stippling or even the scribbling method. I'm just doing some quick hatching here. So this is going to be the darkest area on my sphere, right over here. Now, you might think, but this, the furthest away, should be the darkest. And you would be right, except as a table, as something is sitting on a table, when the light comes down, it also goes around the sphere, and light that hits the table will bounce back up onto the object, which means that this part right here, this darkest area on the sphere, is called the core of shadow. Let's write that down so you'll know it. Core of shadow. All right. Now, the very darkest area is going to be underneath this, in the shadow, right directly underneath your object, where the light is completely blocked. That's going to be your very, very darkest area. And then you can bring the shadow out. Okay. If you want it to be a little more diffuse, then of course you can go back and smear it with your finger a little. Now, right here beside the core of shadow, it's still going to be pretty dark because it's not that close to the light source. And you can always go back and darken areas if you need to, or if you're doing this in pencil, you can erase a little bit. Okay, and then we'll do a bit more shading right up here above the core of shadow. And if you want to blend it, you certainly can. And then you can just go back and adjust it as you need to. Adding more darks or taking away some of the pencil, the graphite. But that's pretty easy, right? So there I've got my sphere. Now, to shade a cube, let's do one in 1-point perspective. And we're not going to do a horizon line, we're just going to use our knowledge and draw a nice cube. And I'm going to still let my light be coming from this direction. And if the light's coming from over here, that means this side is going to get the least amount of light. So this side is going to be pretty dark. Now, you'll still have some light bouncing back up from the surface. Here, we'll just extend that table. So you'll still have some light bouncing back up into this area. But I want to make this side pretty dark, especially up here at the top. See that? This side, the light will bend around it, and so it'll still get some light, so it's not going to be as dark as over here. So I'm just going to give that a little bit of shade. And the top is going to get quite a bit of light because the light source is up above. So I'm not going to do much shading on the top, just a little bit, just a very little bit. And like I said, you can always go back and adjust the shading if you need to. And then of course we'll have the shadow. And the shadow will be right underneath the object. And since the light is coming from this direction, the shadow is going to go away from the light. And we'll talk later on about how to get shadows precisely the right distance away from the object. Remember, right underneath the object is the darkest. Okay. So I've got my sphere and my cube. Let's do a cone. You can see these are coming from the basic shapes. We've got a circle and a square. Triangle. The cone is going to start from a triangle, and we'll just give it a curve on the bottom. Still going to have the light source coming from up here. So where's the darkest area? Over here. That's right. So let's give that some shading. So I want this to be the lightest area because that's where the light's hitting it. And because of this shape, that light's going to probably give us a nice long highlight right over here. What you don't want to do is outline the highlight. That's just not going to look right. All right. Let's get that darkest area. And since this cone is curved, I'm giving it some curve as I shade it. It's just going to help with that illusion of being three-dimensional. Because remember, that's what we're creating here, is the illusion of being three-dimensional, the illusion of space, just like with linear perspective. All right. And of course, we want to draw our shadow. The darkest area will be right underneath the object. And because this object comes to a point, its shadow will also come to a point. That makes sense, doesn't it? And like I said, you can always go back, adjust your shading. If it got too dark in an area, just go back with your eraser and take some of the graphite off. And it can be a lot of fun to just play around with this shading, just to see what you can do with it. It's not really as hard as people sometimes think. You know, sometimes you can have it in your head that, oh no, that's going to be too hard. It's not really, you just have to be shown how to do it. All right, so there's my cone. So the triangle has two different kinds of 3D objects. And so the other one, besides a cone, would be, what do you think? A pyramid, yeah. And so to draw the pyramid, we just draw a triangle, and then we just draw another line at an angle and attach it with a diagonal line, with a slanted line. So still using this as my light source, so the light's going to come down and it's going to hit it on this corner, and so this side back here is going to be pretty dark. Keep in mind though that there's still going to be some reflected light. So I'm going to say the top up here is going to be pretty dark, and then it'll come down and just be sort of dark. But this is still going to be darker than this. Okay. Yep. All right. So let's put some shading on this side as well, but it's going to be lighter, sort of like this. So I'm just lightly shading this in. And I'm doing my lines without curves because this would be a flat side, not curved. But can you see how that makes it look more three-dimensional when you've got this lighter area next to this darker area? It helps with that illusion. It's like having magic, right? All right. And of course, we want our shadow. Darkest part of the drawing will be the shadow right underneath, right up against the object. Really dark there. And then as it comes out, it'll still be darkish. Okay. So we've got our sphere, our cube, cone and pyramid. Let's do one more, and it's sort of a variation on the cube, which could also be done with a rectangle. And that's going to be a cylinder. So to get our cylinder, think about a rectangle. And then I'll just do a curve on the bottom. And then the top also needs a curve, and it needs to be a curve just like this one at the bottom. The top of a cylinder is not straight, and neither is the bottom. They're going to be curved. And on a cylinder, we need to show the top. The top is sort of like a flattened out circle. If you need to, you can look at a can or a bottle or whatever it is that has a round top and get down closer, bring your eye level down and down and down, and you'll see that the circular top starts flattening out into an oval. All right, same light source right over here. So this side over here, this is the top of the can, so it's going to be pretty light. This part of the can down here is going to be pretty dark. But as always, we're still going to have some light reflecting up from the table or whatever surface it is that the object is sitting on. So let's bring this down. And again, cylinders are curved, so I'm giving it a little bit of a curve as I'm shading. Now, right now, we're not worried about exactly how dark it should be, exactly where. This is just getting us started off. Once you understand that you can shade, then you'll be able to do it much more easily. The thing that keeps most people from being able to shade is they think that they can't. They think that it's going to be too complicated, and it's not. Anybody can learn how to shade, just like anybody can learn how to draw. Anybody. All it takes is practice and a way to learn it. With a teacher, if you can. If not, from videos or books. I think it's best with a teacher because then the teacher can be right there with you. But still, if you don't have a teacher or there's nobody near you that can help show you, you can still learn. And really, the more videos that you look at showing you how to do different drawing techniques, the better. You see how we're doing here? All right. I'm still going to do a little bit of shading on top, but just a very small amount. And not over here, just kind of over on this side. Okay. And again, our darkest part of our shadow, you remember, so right underneath that object. We're going to bring it out. We're going to bring it out on both sides a bit. Right underneath it. And we're just going to bring our shadow out. And because the top of my object is curved, I'm going to curve the top of my shadow. Because of course the shadow is simply the area that is blocked off from the light by the object. The object is blocking the light. And that's what gives us a shadow, which is pretty neat if you really think about it. All right, so there you go. Sphere, cube, cone, pyramid, and cylinder. So go practice doing those.